Welcome into the Birds of the Round Table. Happy Draft Eve to everyone out there. We wanted to get one more show in with you guys to talk about the draft before the whole thing goes down. Tomorrow night and Friday night, there will be live shows on the Edge of Philly Sports YouTube channel, so make sure you check those out. You can come and hang out with us, sound off in the comments, let us know what you think about the draft and how it's going. But for tonight, we wanted to give you guys one final chance to ask us anything that you wanted about the NFL draft, and we got a mailbag of questions we opened up on Twitter. We've got about 10 questions here that we're going to get through on this podcast, so you can always chime in the comments if something else comes to you, as always. But I'm joined tonight by my co-hosts. I don't know. We take turns hosting, whatever. It is Dibes. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Dibes, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing so well, man. Absolutely pumped for tomorrow night. Countless thousands of hours put into this thing. There's no Tito's going down tonight because my body is going to be punished on Thursday, Friday nights, partying, drinking, enjoying the draft, reacting with you guys. I cannot wait, man. Christmas is here.
Very well said. Very well said. There's a little bit of me that's like, man, it's going to be so much time in front of a camera over the next 2 days, but it's like what you've been building up to this whole time. So I'm fully prepared to be totally exhausted by midnight on Friday when round 3 wraps. But and I'm also joined here by Ryan Reese. Give him a follow on Twitter at Philly Sports PSA. Ryan, how are you doing this evening?
Just beaming with excitement. I cannot wait. As you said, this is Christmas Eve for many of us. And man, I can't wait. We are less than 24 hours until we are about to start this draft and see what the future holds for the Birds. I can't wait. This is the best day of the year.
It's a really weak draft, but that makes it unpredictable. Like, I've never seen so many so-called draft analysts be all over the place with so many of these prospects, man. Yeah. It's going to be so exciting.
All right, well, let's dive into it here. We've got our first question. It comes to us from Twitter, from Playin' Possum on Twitter. It says, what position do you think Howie will be likely to break his draft tradition for? And so, Ryan, I'll kick this one to you first. What position in the draft do you think Howie is going to change his tune to this offseason?
I'd like to first state that I don't think he will. But obviously, I think any Birds fan has certainly heard it ad nauseum with the Bijan Robinson talk and this guy, that guy, whatever. I don't see that happening, but I think if there's a scenario where like a Brian Branch starts slipping towards 30, I could see him kind of breaking the tradition to drafting a safety in the first round. I think that has to be the most likely scenario, but certainly not a 10. I don't see him going anywhere other than trenches at 10. So,
all right, yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. My answer was gonna be defensive back. I wasn't gonna necessarily pigeonhole it because, I mean, let's be honest, Brian Branch is mostly a slot corner to begin with, but I think there's a good chance that Eagles could walk out of round 1 with a cornerback or a safety if the board falls correctly, and those are two positions that Howie traditionally is not taken in the first round. So I'm with you on that. What about you, Dibes? Are you about to tell me Bijan Robinson or the running back?
Not tonight, man. I can't handle it. We'll get into that. We'll get into that tomorrow. There's so much to peel there. Actually, I think that's one of our questions that we'd be talking about. Brian Branch makes a lot of sense, in a trade back scenario where they go to like 16, 17, something along those lines, because there's a lot of teams that would love Brian Branch. We'll get into that soon. But the position I keep thinking about, and you look back at like 2013 when the Eagles drafted Zach Ertz, is this the year that they maybe at number 30 kind of say, hey, Michael Mayer's sitting there, great value, and say, guess what? We have a two-headed monster with Goddard and Mayer, or Goddard and Kincaid, two guys I think have great value at the back end of round one. That's the position that makes me kind of like, it makes sense given how much they run, two tight end sets, how much they love that position. I agree, Swope. Darnell Washington would be a great addition given how great he is in the run game. And that is the Eagles' bread and butter. They love an efficient rushing attack. So, a tight end at the back end of round one, no one really talks about that much in a historic tight end class. I think makes a lot of sense.
I like it.
All right, let's go back to this question here. Who's the best cover linebacker and tackler? For my money, the best cover linebacker is DeMarvin Overshown. He's got safety background, but he's a dreadful tackler, awful tackler. If you want to balance like good tackler and coverage, you're probably looking at Dives guy Dayon Henley, but he's atrocious against the run. So if you truly want like a 3-down linebacker, I don't know, maybe you look at like Jack Campbell or Trenton Simpson, some guys like that. But yeah, no first round linebackers for sure this year.
Yeah, nobody to get excited about, honestly. And anybody who knows me, I just drool over linebackers, and there's really no one this year that I'm like I gotta have. Like the last couple of years, there's been some guys, and I've fallen in love and gotten my heart broken. And there's really nobody this year in linebackers.
I really like Dayon Henley. I get his age concerns. I get he's still kind of a project, and he's probably going to cost you a day 2 pick, but definitely very good in coverage. Dorian Williams out of Tulane, very good cover linebacker. Quentin, my man, says, what if Howie selects wide receiver at 10? We're going to get into that too, Quentin. That question is coming up, I promise.
All right, let's go to our next question here. Which scenario is likely more favorable? 4 quarterbacks go in the top 9 picks, so it increases the chance of a player dropping down the board to the Eagles, or 3 quarterbacks go in the top 9 picks, increasing the chance another team wants to trade up. Dibes, I'll throw this one to you first. Do you want 4 quarterbacks off the board when the Eagles pick, or do you want one still there to solicit a trade down?
I'm absolutely in the latter because I always pictured, I'm a big picture guy. Like I've always seen this draft with, the contract extension with Jalen Hurts, assets getting a little tighter, money getting a little tighter. Trade back, man. Here are 5 relative trades in recent history that involved some of these potential trade backs. The Buffalo Bills got Josh Allen in 2018. Buffalo sent its first round pick, number 12, and 2 second-rounders to Tampa Bay for number 7. The Cardinals acquired Josh Rosen 2018. They sent 15, a 3rd-rounder, a 5th-rounder to the Raiders for pick number 10. That is definitely worthy of your attention there. So a 3rd and a 5th-round pick. Is it worth to trade back for just a 3rd and a 5th-round pick? How about Patrick Mahomes in 2017? Kansas City sent 27 overall, a 3rd-round pick, and a 2018 first-round pick to the Bills for their first-round pick, which was number 10 overall. Then you got Deshaun Watson and Blaine Gabbert, but I'm not going to waste time on that. So if Howie has a situation that involves a trade back to get another first-rounder and a future first-rounder, do that deal 1,000%. I am 100% team trade back for the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. If a team wants to pay to come up and get a quarterback, you want that to happen. And so I'm firmly on board. I would love to see a quarterback slide and be there at number 10. You get teams like the Buccaneers at 19, even maybe the Vikings at 23 that want to make a move up. Talk about a team with an outside shot. The Vikings at 23 could want to make a move up for a quarterback if there was one there at 10. So, good things happen for the Vikings when they make deals with the Eagles for quarterbacks. So I'll just leave that one floating out here. So what about you, Ryan? Do you agree with us? Is it better if a quarterback falls, or do you want all 4 quarterbacks off the board?
So I think there's 2 schools of thought here. What do I want? I really would love for some of these D linemen to fall into our lap. So I am hoping for 4 quarterbacks. The question is, what's more favorable? I mean, I think more likely is that 3 quarterbacks go. One of them slips out, and exactly like you guys said, we then have some of these quarterback wanting teams by the and could trade back, get some assets for next year. I know Howie wants to get some middle round picks as well, so we can get a first or a second, get a third this year, fourth, fifth, whatever. Add to the draft this year. I think it'd be a smart play. Kind of reassess, see what's out there. Somebody's going to fall into our lap that we'll want. So, I again, I really am pushing for one of these D linemen to kind of fall into our lap. But I think what's most likely to happen is only 3, and we trade back.
All right, let's keep rolling here. Is the Jackson Smith and Jigba rumor a smokescreen to get another team to trade up with the Eagles? Ryan, I'm going to kick this one to you first.
I think probably a little 50-50. I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility. I mean, they obviously did not get much production out of their third wide receiver, as we all know. And they could definitely use another weapon. I mean, I think I've said it on many different shows, the draft shows, the mock drafts, that we could definitely use another weapon, whether that's tight end 2, whether that's wide receiver 3. I'm kind of split between what I want, but honestly, could you imagine Hurts with a weapon like that and having all 3 of those wide receivers with Goddard, with the running back by committee, with that offensive line? It would be absolutely sick. But I also think, again, he's putting that out there because he is the number 1 wide receiver. And there's plenty of teams that would love to jump up there. I think Houston would be a great one to jump up a couple of spots just so they can grab him. And, maybe if they go quarterback in their first pick, pair him with JSN, and boom, they had their quarterback wide receiver tandem for the next 5-10 years. So I definitely think it's a little bit of a mix. I think if they're in a position to nobody else kind of that they covet more, I think they'll be glad to have JSN join the Eagles as wide receiver 3. Be sick.
All right, Dibes, what about you? Is Jackson Smith and Jigba, is that all a smokescreen?
I really don't think it is. I really don't. Value-wise, like Ryan said, like if some of the top defensive line guys are gone at 10, you could do a lot worse than JSN. A lot of people are skeptic about his speed, but this guy has some of the most elite quickness in the group. He showed that at the combine. At Ohio State, he lined up mostly in the slot. The first thing I think of when it comes to JSN, and I'm not comparing the two, but it's the Justin Jefferson talk about how, he's just a slot guy. I'm not falling into that trap again. JSN is an elite talent. It's a passing league. The Eagles want to be a passing team as well. So I think JSN in between Devontae and A.J. Brown, I mean, the sky's the limit for that offense. Imagine A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the corner, on the boundary. Then you have JSN in the middle, like just beating defenses over the top, wide open in the middle area of the football field, stretching a defense. It just makes a ton of sense. Again, you could do a lot worse than JSN. Bijan, sorry, excuse me.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Lucas Van Ness.
He's right there too. Yeah.
I said this on Twitter today. I think there's very few realistic things that could happen at 10 that would make me upset. Literally, the only one I can think of is Lucas Van Ness. Like,
Agreed.
I wouldn't love a Bijan Robinson pick, but I'd be pretty excited about it in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You go take Peter Skoronski. Well, I would like that because you can play him at right guard. You take Paris Johnson, and he's just going to be your backup swing tackle. I'd be okay. I mean, it's not sexy, but I wouldn't hate it. Literally, the only thing I can think of is you take Lucas Van Ness. I will be raging on the draft show because that's the only thing I can think of right now that would just make me angry. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, love the player. I don't know. I tend to think anything that you haven't heard before draft week is probably a bit of a smokescreen. So I'm not buying it too much, but I wouldn't hate it at all.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, we got a comment coming in here from
Rufus.
Rufus. Says, "What's good? Howie needs to not be as Howie. I know we're gonna get Skoronski and another wideout. Totally fine. I'm totally fine with that. Would not hate it at all. Not take it. Well, you can not take a slot this early, but a slot's the position that you have available. So,
Right.
And I don't want to see Quez Watkins out there again.
Right.
So.
I mean, you look at Cincinnati. I mean, they do just fine with their wideouts having three pretty darn good wide receivers, and I'd say I'd take JSN over Tyler Boyd. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's go on to our next question here. After signing Justin Evans and Terrell Edmonds, will Philadelphia splurge on a talented safety like Brian Branch? We did kind of briefly touch on this one a little bit. I think if there's a position that the Eagles are going to break from, it will be defensive back. I don't think it's going to be Brian Branch, though. I like Brian Branch. 10 is too rich for him. He's not going to make it to 30. I feel like his absolute floor is 25 to the New York Giants. He seems like a guy that would fit their scheme well, and I'm not even sure that he makes it all the way to 25. So if he was there at 30, or if they trade back into the early 20s, I could see them doing that. But otherwise, it's just not going to work because 10 is too early, 30, he's going to be gone, in my opinion.
yeah.
Literally exactly what I wrote. The only way this happens is if they trade up from 30. But I want them to, man. I'm a big Brian Branch guy. The guy looked like the best player on the football field in big moments in college. This guy, I think, like you said, Shane, is going to be elite in the slot. The Eagles love them, some slot defenders. And I think that's a position that's getting more and more important in the NFL. The NFL is a mismatch league. It's about having weapons that can exploit mismatches again and again and again, and having versatile defenders that can play in space like a Brian Branch, a player that offers that much versatility. I don't understand why this guy's not a bigger target for the Eagles, because that's exactly why Chauncey Gardner-Johnson thrived and was a big-time playmaker in 2022. So, yeah, I love Brian Branch. I trade back. I mean, that's an A-plus draft for me. If they trade back, maybe with Washington or whoever into like the late teens, early 20s and get Brian Branch, man, I'm doing backflips.
All right. Ryan, anything that you want to add on to that?
Yeah, no, I just to kind of continue it. Yeah, I am a big fan of Brian Branch. I think he's obviously the clear-cut number one safety, and like Dibe said, the versatility has to be so just intoxicating to add to this team. I mean, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was exactly that. He could play anywhere you needed him to, and I think Brian Branch can certainly, get to that point for the Eagles. And they obviously have a need. Don't get me wrong. I like the additions that they did in safety, but there's going to be a need for more. And yeah, I think trade back, as you said, to like 19, Tampa. Maybe Tampa wants to trade up for one of those quarterbacks or whoever. That'd be a perfect spot. You'd take Brian Branch at 19. That's the kind of player where I'm waiting for that jersey to get available on NFLShop.com, because I'll order it right away.
All right. To answer, Swope asked a question in the YouTube chat about. He said, why not trade back 4 to 6 spots from 10 and then trade up 4 to 6 spots from 30? I mean, sure, in an ideal world, but it takes 2 to make a trade go. And so it comes down to having trade partners there. I'm sure nobody moves around the draft more so than Howie does over the last few years, especially later in the draft. He moves all over day 2 and 3, but if there's trades to be made, Howie will make them. It just all comes down to having the right value and the right trade partner.
How many trivia question for you guys? How many draft day trades has Howie Roseman done in his rough 10-year career?
Does it count? Does trading are you talking about a trade during the draft?
Yes, draft day trades.
Does it count trading a pick for a player like the AJ Brown trade last year? Marquise Goodwin. Okay.
I,
I'm
I,
I'm going to say 30.
I was gonna say 26. That was my guess.
the answer is over 40.
Okay.
Woo!
So, Swope, there's a chance. There's a chance we could
40.
see a lot of moves.
Love it.
Yeah. I was like, I'm gonna guess way too low, but
Yeah,
I did
that's
it
what I
anyway.
was thinking too.
All right. Let's go on to our next question here. Every year there are massive reaches at the quarterback position. Which quarterback do you think will be the highest drafted versus projected? Now, this is a difficult question because I think we've got to what are we saying these quarterbacks are projected as? We're talking about like where they're at on consensus big boards, because I have a second round grade on Will Levis, and he's definitely going top 10. So that's my answer. But if we're going off of like consensus boards, that's kind of where he goes. But for my money, Will Levis, or even Hendon Hooker's going in the first round. He's going in the back end of the first round, and he shouldn't even go in the second round. So there's going to be some big mistakes made in the quarterback market during this draft, as there are in most drafts. But I didn't really know where to go with this question. But Hendon Hooker, I guess he's going to go back into round 1, and I think it's insane.
Yeah, it's got to be Will Levis, right? Hooker, again, somebody will probably reach for him end of first, or maybe early second. But yeah, I think I just don't get the Will Levis hype. I don't think he's going to amount to a very good quarterback in this league, and somebody is going to waste a very early draft pick on him, and I just see bust written all over him. So,
all right. Swope says Stroud will be the best of them. We're real quick. Dibes, who's going to be the best quarterback out of this draft?
Bryce Young, no question.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
But to answer this question, and I first of all, I butchered our consensus draft rankings because of the ranking of this player, and that the answer is Anthony Richardson easily for me. I watched a lot of Florida last year. Showed a lot of flashes, but also showed way more kind of negatives, man. He's just not an accurate quarterback. He completed 53.8% of his passes in his 1 year as a starter. His career mark of 54.7 is a little bit better, but he's one of 4 quarterbacks drafted over the last decade who has completed less than 55% of their college passes. The other 3 is Christian Sackenberg, Trace McSorley, and Trey Lance. Not the group you want to be on, Shane, if you're getting top 5 buzz. His inaccuracy, lack of starting experience, man, has to make him one of the riskiest picks I have, especially top 10 picks I've heard of in a long time. People are oohing and awing about his combine performance, man. Man, I have major reservations for this guy. I just hope he doesn't get thrown into the fire from day one, because he is not NFL ready. He should have went back to college, and I hope nothing but the best for Anthony Richardson, but the dude is not ready.
Anthony Richardson will be the best quarterback in this class. He's the number 3 player on my big board. He's number 40 on Dive's big board. So I am all aboard the Anthony Richardson train.
Let's remember this in 5 years and come back to it.
How's that Malik Willis take going, Shane?
It's going as good as anybody else's was from last draft. So
maybe if they gave him more than like 50 throws, he'd.
Yeah. Maybe if Malik Willis got drafted by a team that had actual receivers and didn't see him throw 50 passes and were like, "Yep, we're good," maybe he would have had a better chance. But okay, let's keep rolling on here. Do the Eagles A, draft Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs, B, take a second-tier running back, or C, trade for Derrick Henry or someone else? From WTF on Twitter. Dibes, I'll let you take this one first. What's most likely for the Eagles?
Bijan Robinson has had way too much real estate in my brain these last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We're at the point of the draft, like I said on a previous show, like that Eagles fans are convincing themselves that Bijan is worthy of a first-round pick. Yes, he is the most talented running back prospect since Saquon. Hands down. He's a great talent, but you just don't do that. I'm going to list some guys that you should. Zach Charbonnet, Roschon Johnson, Dwayne McBride, Chase Brown, Tank Bigsby, Zach Evans. All of those guys will be available on day 2 or day 3. They are short yardage backs. They fit really nicely with Penny and Kenny G. There are a lot of options for the Eagles that these guys can make major impacts in 2023. But more so, this is about Jalen Hurts and what he does and what he means for the Eagles' rushing attack. Hurts is a guy that makes the running back's job 10,000 times easier, man. Taking Bijan in the top 10 obviously would reap immediate awards. Would I be excited? Probably for year 1, year 2, year 3. But if you have to weigh the Philadelphia Eagles' future more than their current needs, and that's what Howie has done. That's how he has found success. It would be, long story short, it's far easier for the Eagles to find an impact guy on day 2 and day 3 at running back than it will be at defensive back, at defensive line, even offensive line. It is just a massive, massive mistake to throw that much resource on and a premium asset on a running back position where you can just throw a late round pick and get a guy to bring in. I do not like it. It does not make sense. I am baffled that Eagles fans think Howie's going to have some kind of change of heart about how to build a roster. It's the most mind-boggling thing I've seen by Eagles fans in some time.
All right, Ryan, anything you want to add to that?
Listen, I think if when the day is done, and if Bijan Robinson, no matter where he gets drafted with trade here, trade there, whatever, I think if the Eagles end up drafting Bijan Robinson, that tells me that they feel like they need to just go all in on offense, and they have a small window where they think, before the Hurts contract really starts to weigh on the overall salary cap, that they feel like they have their window. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't. Would I be pissed? No, I wouldn't. I'd be pretty excited. He is a talented player, but as Dibe said, I feel like value and the weight of that value is so much greater in the second and third round, especially the second round. Howie's real good at getting second round running backs. After second round, not the greatest, but listen, if at 62 you're taking Zach Charbonnet, I'd be thrilled. I'd be absolutely thrilled. If you're going to grab somebody in that third round with some of the other players, I'd be great with that too. I think there is a need to add another player to the running back room because, again, the uncertainty of Penny and his injury history. Gainwell seems to do great and then underwhelms. Boston Scott is Boston Scott. Put him in the freezer until the Giants game. And Trey Sermon, who knows? He had a lot of hype and obviously can't find his way onto the field for some reason, and there's obviously a reason for that. So there is a need, but again, there's so much greater needs. And as you said, the weight of the value later on in the draft for some of these other positions aren't as great as running back is. There are running backs to be had later that will have more of an impact than getting another position that in that round or that same position than you would doing it earlier. So I wouldn't, but am I going to be pissed if Bijan Robinson is an Eagle? No.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that they take a second tier back. They're not going to trade for somebody. They already have Penny. They're not trading for someone, but I think it's more likely they take a day or 2 or 3 guy than it is that they take someone in round 1. But it wouldn't take much for me to be excited about Robinson either. Although one of the things I've heard a lot, and Swope mentioned it in the comments here, but that it would take away from Hurts getting hit. He wouldn't have to do as much in the running game. And to be honest, that's a play calling thing more than it is like a Hurts thing. They don't. The majority of the designed runs they call for Hurts or QB sneaks, most of Hurts' runs come on read option plays, and having Bijan Robinson wouldn't change that. If you're calling an option play, all they have to do is crash on Robinson, and Hurts has to pull it anyways. And so if you want Hurts to take less hits, to me, it has less to do with drafting a stud running back. It has more to do with limiting your use of read option plays. So if they want to protect Hurts, if they want him to take less hits, that's the way you do it, not necessarily by having Bijan Robinson or somebody else.
Yeah, I think, like you said, about 90% of Hurts's runs are those options. And the other 10% are those, almost QB draws, where it looks like he's going back and kind of run straight forward. So yeah, I don't necessarily think the whole idea of, oh, well, you got to get a blocking back in there to help Hurts. I don't put a lot of stock into that.
We literally have this question. Can we just go straight to this one, Shane?
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
I love this question. It's literally, yeah.
Would you trade 10 and 30 for Will Anderson Jr.? Would you do it if you were Seahawks also? So from Robert Lyon on Twitter. So as far as like trading, if you're asking like, would you trade 10 and 30 for 5 and 20? What would you have to throw in for that? Like you're looking at least next year's first round pick. Like you're probably looking at a second round pick this year and a first next year to pull that off. That's a lot of capital Seattle would be surrendering. You're more likely to do like a trade 10 and 30 for pick 5 or something like that and get a second back or something like that. But I mean, for me, Will Anderson's the number 1 player on my board, but my answer is still no.
Wow.
But my answer is no because I don't think you need to. If I'm running the draft for the Eagles, I'm looking at Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. I want one of them. I'm looking at there's probably 4 quarterbacks going in the top 4 picks. Seattle may take Tyree Wilson. There's been a lot of smoke around Tyree Wilson. The Lions are taking a cornerback. And all of a sudden you're sitting there at 7 with both of those guys on the board, or 1, depending on what the Seahawks do. And at that point, you can pull the trigger and you could get up to 7 without using both first-round picks. I would trade 10 and a second rounder for either one of those guys easily. But 10 and 30, that's a lot of capital to move up for one player, in my opinion.
Steve.
This is something that I've thought about and gone back and forth with it just depends on the month. I would be so incredibly excited to get Will Anderson in Philadelphia, man. I think I would do it. I think I would do it. He's just a sure thing. And there's not a lot of sure things in this draft, especially when it comes to like finding a superstar. Will Anderson's a superstar. And I would easily trade 10 and 30 for Will Anderson if it is what it is. That's the one scenario. The one scenario that I'm like making that kind of move is for Will Anderson.
All right, Dibes or Ryan, break the tie for us here. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Dibes. I think I thought about this question quite a bit, and I already know Reese's answer. I think it's right now. I think it's a little steep for me, and considering the fact that we, don't have a lot of picks as is. And considering, that, and as Shane, as you said, there's plenty of, players, not plenty, but there's a few players on the defensive line, Wilson, Anderson, Carter, that I think can and will make it to 7, 8 in that range, that I'd be more than fine with giving up, a little bit of capital to move out to grab those guys. I think it's important that we do add to the D line, but I think right now, you could ask me tomorrow, I might switch my answer too, but I'm going to say a little too steep, but oh man, Will Anderson would be disgusting on this team.
I'd be so excited.
Yeah,
I'd be so excited, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it, believe me, but I think I would.
All right. Let's go on to our next question here, since you touched on it here with the coverage. After re-signing Darius Slay and James Bradbury, will the Eagles use a premium pick on a cornerback? Let's amend that, say a defensive back, because there's a lot of crossover in this class.
Yeah.
Will the Eagles select a defensive back in the first 100 selections? In day 1 or 2, are the Eagles going to take a defensive back? Ryan?
Yes. Yeah, I think they need to. Again, whether or not it's, a true safety, whether or not it's, another corner or kind of a hybrid. You have two guys, Slay and Bradbury, that are, not too young in the tooth. And you have a clear need at safety because you just signed 100 guys to 1-year contracts. And, they're not the greatest collection of guys. So I think, it would behoove them to add a D back in the first 3 rounds for sure. I think they do it. Absolutely.
All right, Dibes, what do you think? Are the Eagles going to spend a day 1 or 2 pick on a defensive back?
It makes a lot of sense, man. You look at kind of the age curve for the position, where the NFL is going, trending as a league stylistically. Like you look at Bradbury, 29, you look at Darius Slay, 32. Those guys are like huge pieces to the Eagles defense, man, to their core. We've seen many times that Howie will draft like young replacements before the starter is past their expiration date. I think it makes a lot of sense given how deep the defensive back position is in this draft. To me, it is the strongest group in this entire draft. And you got to think about, look at the last Super Bowl, man. I mean, it was the 3rd highest scoring Super Bowl of all time. The first time, I think, where both teams scored at least 35 points. The way the NFL rules have kind of shifted in favor of passing offenses, it could never hurt to have more guys to slow down Patrick Mahomes. It is a lock. I think it's a pretty much near lock. There's a lot of defensive backs I love in that day 2 range, especially. So that's a yes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that it's one of the deeper positions in the draft. I would be surprised if the Eagles don't walk away with a guy by the end of the 3rd round.
Yep.
Okay, let's keep rolling here. Do the Eagles need to continue investing premium resources in the offensive line? Where do you draw the line with having stout versus resource allocation? So the idea here, Jeff Stoutland turned a 7th round pick who had never played football before into a starting left tackle. Do you need to be spending 1st and 2nd round picks on offensive linemen? What do you think, Dibes?
Absolutely not. I mean, Cam Jurgens, at least it was preseason, albeit, looked like a baller as well. Getting into that 2nd level, I think Stout is one of the best when it comes to developing talent. I wouldn't hate the selection of Peter Skoronski or a Broderick Jones or a Paris Johnson at number 10, because I do think there are worse scenarios. I am very much old school when it comes to position value. I am full on build your team in the trenches. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I don't have one of the top O-linemen on my Eagles big board for number 10 because of Jeff Stoutland. And in Jeff Stoutland, we trust. So I think I would rather see JSN. I would rather see a defensive lineman, things like that. At the end of the day, after I sleep on it, I'd be probably fine with it because of that being the Eagles' identity and their offensive line. Protecting Jalen Hurts, protecting their biggest asset makes a lot of sense.
All right, Ryan, what do you think? Do you agree with that assertion?
Yeah, I listen. We are very fortunate to have Stoutland for sure. Although, listen, I mean, it's not every day that you're going to turn a 7th round pick into a starting potential All-Pro left tackle. Just doesn't happen. But if there's a guy to do it, it's certainly Stout. But listen, I think also just given the way that our line is built right now, whomever, outside of somebody who, can step in and play right guard right away, you're still going to have somebody of value redshirting again. So whether that's you draft a true, tackle, and that tackle is then redshirting behind Lane, or Cam Jurgens, has to redshirt another year waiting for Jason Kelsey to retire. Not the worst problem to have talent, on that second level. But, again, you're investing early picks in players that are going to be sitting around. And yeah, I mean, personally, it's definitely something we need to continue this pipeline of offensive linemen and just continue to replace and think 1-2 years ahead. I agree with that. But yeah, I just think that value as far as team and impact on team immediate impact is certainly less when you're drafting offensive linemen, when you can get somebody second, third, fourth, fifth round that Stout can, mold and take a raw product and turn into a valuable piece. So,
yeah, people talk about Jordan Mailata. I mean, that would be like coming away from the whole Tom Brady thing and having the conclusion that you should only pick quarterbacks on day 3 of the draft because that one worked out.
Right, it's just not going to keep happening. It doesn't grow. Yeah. They don't grow on trees.
Jason Kelsey in the 6th round was the steal of a millennium. And it was because he was so undersized. A lot of people didn't. It wasn't because he was a bad player. It was because he was so undersized, and a lot of teams just didn't think that could work. Jordan Mailata never played football before that worked out, but Lane Johnson was the 4th overall pick. Landon Dickerson was the 2nd-round pick. Cam Jurgens was a 2nd-round pick. Isaac Seumalo, I think he was a 3rd-round pick. He might have been a 2nd-round pick. I can't remember. But
I think he was a 3rd.
Yeah, the Eagles build through the trenches. We know this. The question is, do they need to spend a 1st or a 2nd-round pick on an offensive lineman? They don't need to, but the last truly disastrous season the Eagles had was 2020 when they started like 13 different combinations of offensive linemen. They got their quarterback killed. It broke his brain. They ended up having to trade him. Like, all of that started up front, and you could argue it's like the mental stuff started when Wentz got knocked out of that Seattle playoff game or even before, but Howie likes to build through the trenches, and he knows that the last time it was a complete disaster. What happened was the offensive line fell apart, and yet Lane Johnson played through the torn, at whatever it was, the torn muscle in his abs. Had that not happened last offseason or at the end of last season, or did the Eagles make the Super Bowl? I don't know, because they don't have a lot at offensive tackle. So they're going to invest in the offensive line. It doesn't have to be round 1. It doesn't even have to be round 2, but I'm not going to be upset if it does, because it's very rare that you're going to get through a season as unscathed injury-wise as happened with the Eagles at both offensive line and cornerback. That's why I think both are big needs in this draft.
Yeah. Blake Freeland will be an Eagle by the end of the draft.
Ooh, I'd like him. I love Weedy. You talking about me? Did I do something?
I don't know.
I don't even know how to block people, so it definitely wasn't me.
Okay, let's keep rolling on here. Will Philadelphia look to add an athletic Sam linebacker in the mold of Hassan Reddick? I would argue Hassan Reddick is not a Sam linebacker. The Eagles might list him as that on a depth chart, but he's an edge. He's wrestling the passer. He had dropped into coverage on like 61 snaps the entirety of last season. So now if you're asking, will they take a stand-up edge rusher? Then yeah, maybe. They have Kyron Johnson, a guy that they kind of liked. Now he was a day 3 flyer, but I would be hesitant to say that Reddick is a Sam linebacker, if I'm being honest.
I think, like, when I think of this question, I think of Nolan Smith, who on our final mock with Ryan yesterday, I pegged to the Eagles. I think he's got the best chance of being an Eagle if I had to guess right now. But Howie does this. Howie definitely, drafts replacements to kind of take time and learn the position under guys like Hassan Reddick. Just as we mentioned, Nolan Smith is very much a project, very much a guy that's not a finished product. And I think, having him kind of slowly involved in the defensive line rotation makes a lot of sense. So I took this question as a Nolan Smith question.
Yeah. And if you put it that's I guess that's ultimately where I'm trying to get to. Like, I think there's a good chance they draft a stand-up edge rusher. I would not classify it as a linebacker though. Okay, let's move on. We've got 2 questions left here. Reading the tea leaves of player visits, interviews, pro days attendance, etc. Who are the names to watch out for on days 2 and 3? I'm a terrible person to ask this question because I don't think any of that matters at all. So I'm going to throw it to you, Ryan. What do you think? Are you a player visit interview type? Do you track all that stuff? Do you think it means anything? If so,
I don't think it means, enter, curse word. I don't think it means anything. Honestly, I think half of it is for smokescreen, half of it's for show. Half of it might be, hey, I want to gain a little bit more interest or more knowledge on this player, that player, whatever. Listen, they ultimately get 30 visits, and they end up drafting one player, and normally teams draft one player. So most of them are don't go anywhere. So I don't care. I don't care who comes to visit. I don't care who they Zoom with. I really don't, honestly. I mean, it's nice. But also ultimately what it does is it gets people a little that do track it and do put stock into it. It gets them a little too excited, and then I got to hear about it. And then, oh, God, Bijan Robinson only visited 2 people, and it was the Eagles. So clearly we're going to draft Bijan Robinson. 90 days of Bijan Robinson talk.
Hey, I'm just telling you right now, Bijan Robinson is actively campaigning to be an Eagle. Like, immediately, what quarterback does he want to play with? He says Jalen Hurts. He's complimenting the Eagles' janitors and talking about how nice they were. The dude wants to be an Eagle so bad.
But they're all those people are leading him on into these questions. It's like that question about who do you want to play for? Well, you can't say Patrick Mahomes, so who else would you want to? the other quarterback in the Super Bowl, team that I visited, and there's a soundbite of him on the Dan Patrick Show. I only visited 2 teams, and the Eagles, they were great. And what else is he supposed to say? I had a crappy.
What quarterback who wears a green jersey and sometimes plays games in Pennsylvania would you like to play for?
Exactly. That's exactly what I take 90% of these interviews and sound bites and clips that you're going to see on Twitter and YouTube and all that crap. It's just people pushing their own narrative. It's people trying to fit a storyline. And, listen, anybody who's watched more than a couple of drafts knows that this happens every year. It happens every year with specific people for some reason, or this or that. And people want to fit their narrative, and it's just overload. And we got to hear about it. And these last couple of days leading up to the draft are sometimes insufferable because it's too much. It's just too much. The draft is not a science. Nobody knows. People say stuff just to say stuff, just so you can get excited, and then them do the absolute opposite. So you take it for whatever you want. If you want to put stock into it, great. I don't care. I know Howie's just going to do whatever the hell Howie wants to do, and he's going to do something crazy, and it's either going to be we're going to be mad or we're going to be super excited. And that's the way every draft goes, and it is what it is. But I love it. Anyway.
I love Weed is commenting that he thinks Bijan will be a bust. Believe me, the Cowboys, if they have an opportunity, will draft Bijan Robinson 1,000%.
He'll change his tune real quick there.
I always loved him.
Oh, it's gonna be the next Barry Sanders. Woo!
All right, Dibes, you're the day 2, day 3 guy. Is there anything you want to add on to that question? Player visits, interviews. Who should we be watching out for?
Yeah, the 2 I have are day 3 guys, and that's DTR and that's Broderick Martin. DTR is a quarterback out of UCLA. Could be a day 3 guy, could be an undrafted guy. The Eagles brought in Marcus Mariota, but having another quarterback, backup of the future to develop. He's a guy that has a dual skill set, can run, can pass. That's an interesting name. The other guy I like is Broderick Martin out of Western Kentucky. He was on my most underrated prospect list. 6'4", 337-pound nose tackle. This is a guy who's has all the makings of a two-gapper at the next level. Took a really big step forward in production last year. 23 pressures. He had a 77.5 pass rushing grade. Strong and stout at the point of attack. Great burst. You look at kind of like the Eagles and their situation on the defensive line. Marlon Tuipulotu was the third lowest graded player per PFF on the Eagles roster last year. And with so much pressure being placed on Jordan Davis as the future nose tackle, adding in another nose tackle with some similar traits makes a lot of sense for depth purposes. So Broderick Martin out of Western Kentucky is definitely worthy of your attention.
Don't forget, we are a quarterback factory, so that makes
there it is
for the UCLA product to get added. And that
Sean Clifford.
round, they do have 2 7th-round picks.
Oh no, I can't deal with Sean Clifford, man.
Didn't they bring him in on a visit?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who are Penn State fans. They're already nauseating enough. I cannot stand it.
Sean Clifford is better than Will Levis. Will Levis had to transfer out of Penn State so he could play. So I was doing all my prospect videos, my top 100 that I tweeted out, one for each player. And when it came out that the Eagles had Clifford in on a visit, I quote tweeted that report and I said, "Here's my detailed prospect breakdown of Sean Clifford." And then I just had a GIF saying, "Nope."
Pretty much. That makes it. That's me too.
All right. Hurts contract going to hurt y'all? Well, he makes more in the next 3 years combined than Dak makes next year, so I think we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Better player too, by the way. So, okay, after the Olamide Zaccheaus signing, should the Eagles prioritize finding depth for their outside wide receivers or find a possible upgrade in the slot? This one came from Howie Season on Twitter. Ryan, I'll throw it to you first. What should the Eagles look at here when it comes to wide receiver moves? What type of receiver should they be after?
I think the slot needs to be the priority. Personally, I mean, you have obviously Brown and Smith, but you just there's so many question marks. I mean, listen, it's a nice signing, but you don't know if he's going to work out better than Quez, and who knows? Quez could certainly bounce back. He might have just had an off year, and maybe he's motivated to get out there. But you need to figure it out first and foremost. Whoever it's going to be, it needs to get figured out. And I would absolutely love for them to draft somebody to come in and fight for that position, whether it be early or kind of mid round kind of guy, because there are plenty of guys day 2, day 3 that could easily come in and fight for that wide receiver 3 spot. So I go slot, but either way, there needs to be talent added to the wide receiver room.
All right, Dibes, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything Ryan just said. Like outside of guys like a Cedric Tillman, Marvin Mims, like Rashee Rice, like those guys have like upside to be starting outside wide receivers. There aren't a lot of them. There really aren't. And the bulk of the wide receivers when it comes to like depth are slot receivers. So guys like Tank Dell, guys in that like day 2, day 3 area that could fill in that slot role. The only thing that like makes me like scratch my head just a little bit is that Devontae Smith played 6.5% more snaps in the slot last year. So could we see that continue to rise moving forward? Could we see him play more and more slot snaps in year 3? I don't know. But I think betting wise, it makes more sense to roll with the slot guy because there's way more of them in this draft.
Yeah, I would say if you're signing a guy whose best season of his career, he had 500 receiving yards, and you signed him to a really small deal, if that's impacting your draft strategy, you're approaching it all wrong.
There it is.
Yeah.
If you get the opportunity to go take a good slot receiver, you do it, and Zaccheaus can be a backup. if there's not a good slot receiver and there's a good outside receiver, you do it because you need depth there, because the Eagles receiving core is pretty thin behind their top duo, and their top duo is really good, one of the best duos in the league. But think what the offense looks like if one of those guys go down. But I mean, I think you can work Devonta Smith out of the slot a lot. They worked him out of the slot a lot in empty sets. It was something they would do to get him some releases against safeties, and he tore it up. So I think, you can draft an outside receiver, and if push came to shove and you really liked him, you can put Devonta Smith in the slot, and I don't think that's a misuse of his talents at all. So they use A.J. Brown in the slot a decent amount too. So they use guys out of the slot. They do a lot of different things. So really, you just want a good player. But this is a draft where there's a lot of slot receivers and not a lot of big bodies. So just go take a good football player at the end of the day. Don't be too worried about pigeonholing a guy into a specific fit. That's how you skip Justin Jefferson and take Jalen Reagor.
Very true.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, that is going to about wrap it up here. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions on the Twitter post that we put out for this mailbag. I hope you guys will all join us next week, or not next week. Sorry. It's been a long draft process. Hope you'll join us tomorrow night on the draft show, and Friday night we'll be live all throughout draft weekend talking about the picks. Before we get out of here, though, Ryan, any final thoughts? Last second draft takes you need to fire off, stuff you want to plug, get it out there. The floor is yours.
Listen, this is this is such a great time. I love draft time. I love the lead up. I love everything about it. I love the 3-day weekend of drafting. I honestly, I not gonna lie, I miss the old school where it was Saturday and you knew that the whole day was just spent on the couch, just sitting there watching the draft for hours after hours. But on the one hand, I'm also ready for the talk to be over and ready for this to happen, ready to add a few Eagles to the roster here. I've had a lot of fun leading up to all this, and can't wait to, take a little break and get started on next year. And but yeah, I think there's a few guys I'd be really, really happy with. There's a few guys I'd be really, really mad with. We'll see if any of those happen. But it's Howie, so it'll probably just be something random and confusing, and we'll be like, oh, okay, didn't see that happening. So. But yeah, I'm excited. Definitely tune in for the next 2 days for awesome draft coverage, and go Birds, and come on, Howie. Let's keep this great run of yours going.
All right. Shout out to Rufus Rogers here in the comments. Says he's excited for tomorrow. We're the only show he'll watch. Longtime listener of the podcast. I remember interacting a lot during 2 years ago, the first live draft show we did. So excited to have you in the chat. As always, Dibes, any final thoughts? Any last takes you need to fire off before we get out of here?
Just this. Let's go! Let's go!
Listen to that all day.
Stop. That's the greatest sound in sports. I am a draft degenerate when it comes to NFL and NBA drafts, man. This is Christmas. I'm so excited, man. If you couldn't tell.
Yeah, just a little bit.
It is time. All right. Well, for my final thought, I want to plug my mock draft that got put out on Edge of Philly Sports, EOPsports.com today. I know you guys have been through all the mock drafts, all of the analysis. Sometimes we just need a break. And so I wrote a mock draft where I just made fun of every team and the picks from someone else's draft. So in honor of our Cowboys fan that's here in the chat, I just want to share my screen here and read what I wrote about the Cowboys.
Nice.
So in this mock draft, which came out on NFL.com, it had the Cowboys selecting Dalton Kincaid. And so I wrote, the new excuse for Dak Prescott's inability to win in the postseason is some combination of lack of offensive weapons. Who could have possibly predicted that giving away Amari Cooper would blow up in your face? And scapegoating Kellen Moore. Moore is gone now, leaving Mike McCarthy, a coach so bad he could only get one Super Bowl out of prime Aaron Rodgers, as their offensive play caller. After asserting his belief in running the ball, the Cowboys cut running back Ezekiel Elliott and drafted a tight end who doesn't have a clue how to block. And then I put a footnote. Upon further reflection, it's probably unfair to blame the lack of postseason success on Dak Prescott. After all, the last time the Cowboys advanced past the divisional round of the playoffs, Dak was only 2 years old.
Ouch.
So there you go. Go check that out. Zingers for every team, including the teams that don't have a first-round pick. I took some good shots at the Eagles in that one, too. It's always a fun exercise for me to put together. So go read that. Literally the only article I've written this entire season, but it was a fun one. So go check that out, and it'll get you through till tomorrow night at 6:30. 7:30. What time does the draft start?
8 o'clock. Draft starts at 8. We're starting at 7:30.
Okay, yeah. So we will be live tomorrow on the Edge of Philly Sports YouTube channel at 7:30. Draft kicks off at 8. You don't even need to put the draft on. Just put it up here. We've got graphics. We've got everything you're going to need. Come hang out. Invite a friend. Share the stream. Jump in the chat. We want to blow this thing up. Hit big viewer counts and get the chat hopping tomorrow night. So from all of us here at Birds of the Round Table, we wish you the best for your draft dreams, except for the Cowboys fans in the chat. We don't wish you the best. We hope you guys draft a whole bunch of running backs, but it's going to be fun. We're going to be here breaking it all down. So from me, from Dibes, from Ryan, Philly Sports Alliance, Edge of Philly Sports, we will catch you guys tomorrow night on the live draft show. Go Birds.